It's been quite some time since I've started off a video like this. Context. Over on Twitter a few days ago, I had come across a post that went viral by itself of a piece of art involving a Soviet sniper and Stroheim from Part 2 Battle Tendency. The art is supposed to be indicative of when Stroheim, at the end of his life, was at the Battle of Stalingrad fighting the Soviet Union for Germany. Overall, with the art piece itself, I think it's very well done and shows a lot of things I think that could have happened if we saw this battle take place. I think Iraqi would like it very much. But this is where I step in. I quote retweeted this piece of fan art and said this exactly. This technically happened, but what's even wilder is that he died, which leads me down the rabbit hole of what could kill a cyborg who could fight a pillarman in World War II. I tweet like this all the time. It's not very new to my followers or me, but for whatever reason, this tweet blew up. I think it's my most liked tweet ever with 1.1 million impressions and 40k likes. I then proceed to show it to my community tab, and shocking to me, it did pretty well. And since there is, well, at least a lot of interest here from what I can tell, I will gladly answer the question of what happened to Stroheim after Battle Tendency. And yes, World War II historians that have somehow come to my comment section, I know the obvious answer: artillery fire and planes and tanks, etc. That's the easy way, but this is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and we have to deal with JoJo shenanigans. It's not as clear cut as you think it is. So with that all out of the way, hello, my name is Metas. Walk with me. So I do think a little bit of buildup is needed here, as we kind of need to know the history of Stroheim and his character to understand what he could have done at the end of Battle Tendency, mostly during the Battle of Stalingrad. While we don't know much about his early history, one can speculate, if you know your German history is what I'm going to say. There's going to be a lot of German in this video because I can't say the four-letter word because I'll be demonetized, so I'll be tiptoeing around that a lot during this. But he probably was indoctrinated into a lot of propaganda by a certain party and became the man who he is today, and eventually joined the German army and eventually became a SS officer who accepted a mission in Mexico to study a pillarman, which shockingly enough is actually entirely historically accurate, as the Germans in control at this time were very interested in the esoteric and supernatural. Shockingly enough, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and COD Zombies get the German party at this time very, very correctly. However, what Stroheim didn't get correct was the fact that the pillarman that he was looking over was way too much for him. Santana would then proceed to destroy everybody in that lab, only leaving Speedwagon, Stroheim, and Joseph behind. So if it wasn't for Joseph's genius and Stroheim's sacrifice, they would not have ended up defeating Santana here. This early introduction reveals a lot about Stroheim's character, as he's incredibly arrogant, a dickhead, but is extremely patriotic towards the country of Germany at this time, and would give his life to it. But thanks to German science, the Stroheim we previously knew is now gone, now replaced with the cyborg version of the character that we know. The next time we see him is in Switzerland when he fights Cars. Of course, a fight breaks out, and Stroheim, thanks to his cybernetics, is able to at least hold off Cars for a bit, until Cars gets serious and then he starts to get washed. There seems to be a pretty big trend here. If Stroheim does not have the information of the opponent he's fighting in full or knows their full capabilities, he gets cocky and loses pretty badly. But thankfully, Cars does not get the Redstone of Aja here, as it falls into Joseph and the other crew's hands. At this point in the story, Stroheim is a character that kind of symbolizes the enemy of my enemy is my friend, basically, as the entire group realizes the pillarmen are a threat worse than any army on the planet. Hearing about this, Stroheim gets repairs from the Speedwagon Foundation, and in the final battle, he triumphantly accidentally turns Cars into the ultimate life form. Dude, you suck, like a lot. Wow. While Stroheim can't fight a pillarman to save his life, Stroheim makes it up with the fact that he's the ultimate rebound man and saves Joseph's life twice in two critical spots during the final battle with the ultimate life form Cars. You could make the real life comparison that Stroheim and Dennis Rodman are basically the same guy. Jokes aside, after the battle with the ultimate life form, would gift Joseph a robotic arm to replace his severed one. And 4 years later, during World War II at the Battle of Stalingrad, Stroheim would perish, in Iraqi's words, as a proud German soldier. What we can infer about Stroheim and his character through his history is that Stroheim is a bit of a weird dude. He's cocky, he's arrogant, he's patriotic, a total asshole, has all these powers and abilities thanks to German science, but can't use them for shit. Honestly, it might be Iraqi schlocky trying to tell an allegory how Germany could have changed the world, but due to the circumstances at the time, they definitely were not going to be doing that. So why all this intrigue then? Well, it probably comes down to two factors knowing the JoJo's community. One, German man funny, and the fact his clutching ability is on the same level as Koichi, so a lot of people respect that. Second is how his story ends, or at least how his synopsis of his story ends. As personally, I view it as very blunt and not really expanded on in comparison to other characters here. Smokey gets a better one than Stroheim, and Smokey wasn't even relevant to the plot for a majority of the part. Stroheim was much more relevant than Smokey ever was, so this very blunt synopsis just feels off. So I understand the intrigue there. Even if it was just a little bit more descriptive like Speedwagon's, fans wouldn't be asking what happened at the Battle of Stalingrad involving Stroheim. So historically speaking, what happened at the Battle of Stalingrad? A lot happened, like so much. There is hours worth of content. Should I say content? That feels bad. History, I should say, actually, in just the information presented in this battle. And when it comes to historical firsthand accounts of Soviet and German soldiers, it is an insane battle that took place over the course of a few months during World War II. It can be stated that this battle is the greatest example of urban warfare ever in human history due to the sheer scale and death count that occurred in Stalingrad. While the statement and phrase "war is hell" might have not been birthed on this battlefield, I can say it is the poster boy of that statement till the next greatest conflict in human history. The Battle of Stalingrad is no joke, and there is so much information here that I sadly can't cover it all, but I'll try to get through some of the basics of the war itself to show you what Stroheim was dealing with. But I highly do recommend to pause this video, open up a new tab, and just look it up for yourself, watch a few YouTube videos, I'll try to link some down below, to fully understand what we are dealing with here, because I guarantee you I will miss something, but of course the comment section will fill you in. In the early history of this battle, it did seem like the Germans were winning. However, this was false confidence, because even before they started this battle, they were running low on resources and would continue to run low on resources into the very ending days of the Battle of Stalingrad, being one of the key factors in why they lost. The Germans would constantly face resistance against the Soviets, but would keep pushing in deeper and deeper. However, they would reach a critical point where neither side could do anything to each other. And that's not because they were equally matched and no men were dying at this point. No. To put this into perspective, the Germans were pushing so hard they couldn't keep up with themselves and couldn't resupply, and the Soviets were too stubborn to give up land, as they kept on throwing body after body at the Germans, ultimately hitting a peak of a stalemate. And on November 19th, Operation Uranus would commence on top of a Russian winter storm. Tanks, airplanes, and artillery would be able to hit harder in these colder conditions, and over the course of 3 days, the German army would be surrounded, and Adolf would tell his armies to stay still and not break out. This marks the turning point in the Battle of Stalingrad in the favor of the Soviet Union, and basically marks the end of the Third Reich. With an extremely low amount of resources, resupplies, and a grueling Russian winter, the German army does not survive. The Soviet forces are throwing bodies, and it's working. While the Germans might have superior technology, they clearly don't know how to use it, nor are they intelligent enough for them to use it in their advantage at this point. This is all because Adolf sucks at commanding. This is historically known and proven. By the end of the Battle of Stalingrad, German commanders basically tell their soldiers, at the will of your own conscience, surrender or keep fighting. The only Germans left are a weak force of 11,000 Germans that die by March of 1943. The Soviets have now finally reclaimed Stalingrad. During the course of the battle, almost daily, thousands of men would die. Hundreds of thousands of men would die, whether that be to wounds or the conditions. When it's all said and done, the Battle of Stalingrad goes down as one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Now, factoring Stroheim into all of this, I can confidently tell you, using the anime to fill in some gaps, more likely than not, Stroheim perished in the southern front of the Battle of Stalingrad, as the northern section was not filled with that German pride that is stated in the manga, as they were taking pot shots at the Soviet forces at this time, cowering in the rubble. Stroheim, no matter what part he took place in, whether that be in the beginning, the middle, or the end, more likely than not saw the fall of the Third Reich. That winter, his entire world crumbled around him, falling like a proud German soldier. character. So with all of that history out of the way, what could have killed Stroheim? To put it into perspective, I'll do a little bit of power scaling here, but thankfully Stroheim scaling is not that complex at all. If we take Stroheim's word at face value and he has been made to fight somebody like Santana, at bare minimum, he is stronger than a majority of the vampires we have seen within the JoJo verse, which would make him as strong as Part 1 Dio, if not a little bit stronger than that. That is also backed up by the food chain scale in Part 2 as well. And if you really want to be unique and say the Speedwagon Foundation also gave him like an upgrade or whatever and he can fight a regular Pillarman now, you could scale him a little bit further up the chain. But even with all these advancements, it's still Stroheim. He's still kind of an idiot. And while you can say he has a lot of bad matchups because every character he fights is just overall stronger than him, so we never got to see his full potential, it probably doesn't matter in the long run in terms of what we're discussing next. So you're looking at like a Dio or a Santana level character here. Now, putting Stroheim against the USSR with no JoJo shenanigans here makes a bit of sense on why he perished on this battlefield. With roughly over 1 million people at any given time on the Soviet side, with guns, artillery pieces, tanks, and aircraft would be able to kill Stroheim. This shouldn't be a question. However, it depends on how they kill him. Any personnel on the USSR side would have been able to kill Stroheim in a 1v, I don't know, like 10 to 20 fight. We've seen Vampire and Pillarman easily cleaver through soldiers before, so this shouldn't be a challenge for Stroheim. Now, a sniper could be a little bit different there. I will give you that. However, when it comes to heavy artillery here in combination with personnel, this is where the conversation changes pretty dramatically. Artillery and aircraft would have been able to dust Stroheim if it made contact with him. It has been noted by many historians that when you get hit by one of these things, you just basically explode and there's not really left much of you. And while Stroheim is kind of durable, with enough weakening from these heavy pieces of equipment and then personnel coming to finish you off, Stroheim would have died this way. However, I don't think this is how he died. I don't think the USSR would have focused on one guy with all that equipment, as there's a much larger battle going on here. If we take the statement at the end of Part 2 at face value, and it was some battlefield he was on randomly in Stalingrad that he met his end, it was probably a combination of a lot of personnel and heavy tanks. The weather and how late into the war it was. I'm highly confident that Stroheim was not getting any repairs. It was probably due to a multitude of factors here that affected most Germans at this time. Now, to put a little bit of character in here, that's not entirely canon, this is just my speculation here, so do not take it as fact. He fell on the field of honor, fighting like a proud German soldier, stated in Part 2. I think he probably went out guns blazing, trying to save his allies, like he did with Joseph back in Part 2. Multiple times, in fact, actually, as I think that would be consistent with his character. So with no JoJo shenanigans at play here, it's probably pretty realistic how he died. A combination of heavy artillery, aircraft, personnel, tanks, maybe any of those individualistically, or any of those in any other combination you can think of, probably got him at the very end of the Battle of Stalingrad. So with the realistic scenario out of the way, let's talk about the Soviet Union stand user theory. So to immediately contradict myself, there is no official Russian stand user that killed Stroheim. I have somehow managed to find myself opening up a can of worms here with this question. The amount of people that canonically think this scenario happened where a Russian stand user was the reason why Stroheim died is absolutely insane. I have no idea why this meant it was because of Reddit. Reddit gaslit people. Okay, well that answered that question. However, statistically speaking, it is not zero, but it only works with speculation and numbers we can kind of quantify if they are relatable if you think so. So take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Where we need to begin here with is how many Soviets partaked in the Battle of Stalingrad. The numbers vary wildly here. It is definitely well over 1 million, but the highest echelon this number can go is at most, from what I can tell, is maybe 3 million. However, it's really contentious and a lot of historians argue about this number all the time. So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to say there was at least 2.5 million Russians that participated in the Battle of Stalingrad. But why is it important, metas, you're asking? Well, in Part 1, it is stated by Zappelli that 1 in 10,000 people on the planet have hormone potential. So out of that 2.5 million Soviets, only about 250 of them could end up becoming hormone masters. However, I'd like to note here that is not guaranteed, so put an asterisk next to that number. This is where it's going to get murky, so follow with me here. In Part 7 Steel Ball Run, it states that the steel balls and the ripple, or hormone, have the ability to get people stands, as it's a step forward in gaining a stand, meaning that there is a correlation between stand and hormone potential. Note, I am playing devil's advocate here, and I don't necessarily agree with my logic here. I'm just using it for fun's sake. So out of that 250, how many of them can become stand users or are stand users? Well, if you know the history of the franchise and the lore and world building, you would know that stand users are incredibly rare, basically being mythic. And the only reason why we see so many is because stand users attract other stand users. So out of the 250 here, statistically speaking, with natural born stand users, there might be a high chance that none of them are stand users, because natural born stand users are the rarest category of stand user, and the largest being stand users who were given stands by objects like the Holy Corpse and the stand arrows, which make up a bulk of the cast. However, they're not in play here, so disregard that. However, to give you a little bit more hope, there is one category that could save this. Stand users born out of incredible skill. There are many examples of this: Hermit Purple, Cinderella, Pearl Jam, among many others. Their users were so good at these skills that they have developed over the course of many years that they developed a stand. Looking at the hellish landscape that was the Battle of Stalingrad, for a Soviet soldier to survive that, they'd have to have such a crazy battle IQ and skill in so many different categories that at least one out of that 250 or 2.5 million that we're just using for an example here should be a stand user. There has to at least be one. I doubt there was zero. There's no way there would be zero, but I do have to bring it down a few steps. The chances of Stroheim fighting this Soviet Union stand user might not be as high as you think it is. Due to the high fatality rate with the Soviet army at this time, the chances of this guy even surviving the war is very slim, and even slimmer that these two could even encounter each other. It would almost be like fate itself made these two fight, which isn't improbable in JoJo, but that's just borderline crazy speculation at that point. So when it comes to a Soviet stand user supposedly killing Stroheim during the Battle of Stalingrad, it could have happened. It's extremely slim and probably didn't happen, as it leans way more towards no than yes. But against all odds, if a stand user from the Soviet Union did come across Stroheim, Stroheim probably was boasting about German superiority and within an instant probably died, not knowing what he was actually fighting. Because to him, it was just a mere man, but in reality, it was something of the supernatural, something far above the technologies of man. However, whatever happened to him doesn't matter, as he is lost to time. Nobody remembers Stroheim, nor does the world care about his advanced technology that would have probably revolutionized the world. The only person that cared about Stroheim, or at least thought about him after his death, was probably Joseph, as he looks at his hand. Intended by Araki or not, there is a prosaic doom about this ending for Stroheim. Uncared for and unloved by his nation or others, his final dwelling place is an unmarked grave due to the side he was fighting on. And before I end the video, I just wanted to cover this rabbit hole. I don't like Stroheim, nor am I a sympathizer. And one more thing, I'll probably put this at the beginning of the video as well, but I want to cover more characters like this within JoJo who kind of have like a mysterious ending to them. So if you have any ideas, put it in the comment section down below. I would love to cover them in the future. So with that all being said, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.